Good day, my lords and ladies. Today's topic is brawling or sniping, a question of range. And what we're going to look at here is how the range that you're fighting at will impact on the way you fight, and also your style of fighting might impact the range at which you wish to do so. So at one end of the scale, the short end of the scale, we have brawling. And that's when you're operating at a very short range, noting that the Kingdom Lockhart, the bare minimum is 5 metres, can't be any less than that. And long range is essentially as long as you can reasonably shoot, which for most people would be, say, 50, 60 odd metres. One of the things I'll say is that I personally prefer to operate at a very short range. I'm a brawler. However, that is a personal preference in fighting style, and it is not necessarily the best way to do things. It's just the best way that I should be doing things. So let's have a look at long range versus short range and the differences. So the first one is really, really obvious, and that is that if you're a long, long way away, then you're a much smaller target. Furthermore, an arrow shot will take much longer to get to you, and if you're doing any sort of movement whatsoever, then the possibility of missing is further exaggerated. So if you're further away, then you are a less desirable target than someone who is close. That is pretty obvious, pretty self-evident, but we should say that for completeness. The other thing is that if you have any sort of cover, then if someone on the opposing side wishes to manoeuvre such that they can pull you out of line of that cover, then it's much easier for them to do so with someone who's closer than it is for someone who's further away. Again, pretty self-evident. So what does this mean? So for starters, it means that if you're at range, if you're sniping, you can actually be much more static than you are if you're brawling. You can afford to be moving a lot less than you would have to if you're really close. Furthermore, a hard cover is potentially more useful because you can really effectively obscure yourself, making a undesirable target even less desirable. And the danger of becoming complacent around cover is nowhere near as extreme as it would be if you're at short range. Movement, though, is still important, but the kind of movement will be a bit different. So if you're at really long range, then you'll find that passive movement is probably more important as far as your defence is concerned. And that's simply because if you're moving at all, it's very hard for people to lead a target that's 50 or 60 metres away. You probably don't have to dodge many shots. Most arrows coming towards you, they're probably going to miss anyway. Whereas if you're much closer, then you have to be manoeuvring more actively. So you have to manoeuvre to get yourself in a position where you can get a better shot. You also have to manoeuvre to avoid incoming fire. Your passive movement is still very, very important, but you're relying on your active movement more, be it offensive or defensive, when you're at closer range than when you are at longer range. Another thing that is really important is communication with your fellow fighters. So if you're at very close range, then communicating really effectively with the fighters around you is far more important. Ideally, they will be giving you instruction, picking targets, telling you where to go, whatever it might be. And also you'll be giving them information as well, be it threats or whatever it may be. So having a good communication with fellow fighters is more important at close range. When you're at longer range, less critical is that communication, and also potentially it'll be a lot harder. It could be that the nearest friendly heavy fighters might be 30, 40 metres away, in which case it's a lot harder for them to hear you and for you to hear them. However, when you're close, you can't see as much of what's happening around you at a higher strategic level, than you can when you're further away. So if up the back of the war field, you've got a good view of the whole lot, you can much better assess what's happening with the battle as a whole, which means that you can take your time to get really good, effective sniping shots. When you're closer, you can't necessarily see as much of the battlefield as a whole. So for that person who's sniping, they're potentially much better placed to issue command and instruction at a strategic level. Another fairly obvious factor is that of how vulnerable you are to enemy heavy fighters. So if you're a long, long way away, they have to move a long distance before they can kill you. But if you're much closer, then it's much easier for them to kill you. So your awareness of potential breakthroughs and so on has to be much, much stronger when you're at close range. Another factor which is important is reload time. So when you're at range, it's much more important to get really good, precise shots. So you need to take your time to do that. When you're closer, it's more important on that spectrum to be able to shoot much faster. So you can get more opportunities to get a good solid target of opportunity. So the closer you are, the more important it is that you can reload faster. And also, if you come up against enemy archers, as always, the archer that reloads first has the advantage. Finally, there's a factor of experience. So if you're a less experienced fighter, then you're going out in the warfield, it's probably better to be at a longer range. It gives you more time to think about what's happening, to see what's happening, to take nice, clean, precise targeted shots. Whereas if you intend to be very, very close, then it's better if you are more experienced. Now, that doesn't mean to say that experienced fighters shouldn't fight at range or inexperienced fighters shouldn't brawl. Short range versus long range. There's and the style of fighter that goes around that. There's a place for everything. So as I said at the start, my personal preference is get up close and personal and brawl. But having said that, there's been many an occasion where I've completely scunted someone at 50 or 60 metres. So having a better understanding of pros and cons is what this is all about. And hopefully you've gained something out of this. So thank you very much for listening. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe. If you want to share the video with friends, please share it with friends. If you want to leave comments, please leave comments. If you do, I will answer them. And we'll see you next time. Bye.